We are going to start off Unit 3 by going back to Chapter P, the prerequisite chapter, and doing a little bit of review on polynomials and factoring. So, this definition of a polynomial, we have to make sure that we pay attention. A polynomial is a single term or the sum of two or more terms containing variables with whole number exponents. So if you have like an x to the 1/2, not a polynomial. A polynomial is in standard form when the terms are written in order of descending powers of the variable. So we'd want to go like fourth power, third power, second power, first power, constant. That's standard form. If you mix up the powers, it's not in standard form. The degree of the polynomial is going to be the highest exponent of all of the different variables. And the leading coefficient is the coefficient of the first term when it is in standard form. So it's going to be the coefficient of the term that determines the degree. Okay? And we can describe polynomials by the number of terms. Monomial has one term, binomial has two terms, trinomial has three terms. This is all review of stuff that you learned in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Okay? So what we want to do is be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide polynomials. Dividing is going to come a little bit later, but last year you practiced adding, subtracting, and multiplying for sure. So what I would suggest that you do is put the video on pause, try numbers 1 through 5 as a quick little refresher, and come back and check the answers in just a minute. If you get the answers right, then you don't need to stay and listen to the explanations because you'll know that you're on track. So go ahead and pause the video. I'll come back with answers in 3 seconds. All right, here are the answers. So if you want to pause and check your answers real quick so you can decide if you want to skip the next couple minutes of the video or you can stick around for the explanations here. So for number 1, when we're adding, all we're doing is combining like terms. So I had negative 9x cubed and positive 13x cubed. That's how I got 4x cubed. 7x squared and 2x squared is 9x squared. Then I have negative 5x and negative 8x. That makes negative 13. And I have positive 3 and negative 6. So we get negative 3 when we put those together. I don't need to distribute anything here because this plus in between the parentheses determines the operation. The only invisible operation is multiplication. So like on number 3, when the parentheses are back to back like that, that's multiplication. Number 4, multiplication. Number 2, there is a sign in between. So this is not a multiplication problem. I always see people end up multiplying these out, so be very careful there. On number 2, remember that when we subtract an entire polynomial, we need to first distribute the negative. And so that's how we get this in pink. That's all the signs flipped. After that, we're just combining like terms like we did on number 1, and this is the answer that we get. On number 3, we are going to distribute twice. One time, we're starting with 2x. We're going to distribute that to all 3 terms. Then we come back and multiply the 3 and distribute that to all 3 terms. And we get all of those terms lined out, and then we just go through and collect our like terms, and that's how we get our answer. Now for number 3, this did not apply, but for number 4, some of you have learned the acronym FOIL. The word FOIL does not mean to multiply, and I kind of hate this word because we use it incorrectly. FOIL is an acronym to remember first term, outside, inside, lasts. That's what FOIL means. And the purpose of FOIL is to be able to multiply these in your head, okay? We always know that the first is going to give us our x squared, and the last is going to give us our negative 4. So we don't need to do anything with that. The middle term is always going to be your outside plus your inside. Okay, so when I multiply these, I'm going to write down 18x squared, and then in my head, I think negative 3x, positive 24x. That's how I get 21x for the middle, and then last I get negative 4. This piece here, you can kind of do inside your head. And then on number 5, this is one we've seen several times already this year. Square the first, square the last, multiply, and double. That's where the negative 28 term comes from on the outside. Great. Okay. Let's remind ourselves of some of our special products. So the sum and difference of two terms, we call these conjugates, okay? Anytime you have, and we'll see this a lot more when we start looking at equations and radicals and complex numbers, but these two, where it's the exact same thing, one with a plus and one with a minus, those are called conjugates. That's a word that we hear a lot in calculus as well. When we multiply by the conjugates, we always end up with the difference of squares, a squared plus b squared. So you can see in the example there, we didn't even have to do FOIL or distribute because we recognize that pattern. So we just square the first, square the last, and put a subtraction in between. Okay? Squaring a binomial, this is the thing that we've already practiced. This is square the first, square the last, multiply and double. That's something we've practiced a whole lot already, okay? Now the last one, cubing a binomial, this is a little bit harder to remember, and this is a formula that I expect you to know. I'm not going to provide this formula to you, so put it on a flashcard, start memorizing it now. When it comes to the cube of a binomial, notice the pattern here, because this is not a formula that I have memorized either. I just know how to build it. So the pattern is always this. You're going to start with 1, 3, 3, 1. Those are going to be your coefficients all the way across. Notice that the A's go from 3 to 2 to 1 and then gone from left to right. The B powers go from 3 to 2 to 1 and then gone from the left. So that's all you got to do to set it up. Now, it's the sign of B that determines whether you get a plus or a minus. So in this case, B is negative. When B is negative, this is a B to the first, which is going to stay negative. This is a B to the third, which is going to stay negative. But this one is a B squared, which is always going to become positive. So when you multiply this out, now you may have learned SOAP in your previous classes. That's not what this is. That doesn't go along here. But the middle term has a squared on it, so it should never change. It's only going to be these two signs, the two ends that switch from positive to negative or vice versa. So the first two we've gotten a lot of practice with, but let's look at how we would cube these binomials. I'm going to move this off the screen and again talk about how we can build this formula. So I have two pieces here. This is A minus B. So in this case, A is X and B is 5. And so we're going to build our formula like this. We're going to start with the A's. A cubed, A squared, A, and then a constant. At the end, we start with the B's. B cubed, now work backwards. B squared, B, and then a constant. Now we put in our coefficients. 1, 3, 3, 1. It's easy to remember that they're 3's because it's cubed. Okay. Now we need to decide. The middle term is always a plus, but since this one has a minus in it, we want a minus here and a minus here. That's the hard part to remember. And so now all we do is fill in those pieces. So 1 times A cubed in this case is going to be X cubed minus 3 times A squared would be X squared times B, which is 5. Notice we didn't use negative 5 because we've already built the minuses where they need to go. So A and B are going to be positive numbers whenever we plug them in. Then I have plus 3 times A, which is just X, and then times 5 squared, minus 1 times 5 cubed. Now, you should know your perfect cubes out to 10 without a calculator. 1 cubed, 2 cubed, 3 cubed, and so on, all the way out to 10 cubed. You should recognize those without a calculator. So I'll put them here on the side in case you need them. When we start factoring, it's really important that you can recognize those. So all we need to do now is simplify what we have here. So that's going to be x cubed minus 15x squared plus 5 squared is 25. 25 times 3 is going to be plus 75x minus 5 cubed, which is 125. So that's what we get when we multiply that out. Let's look at number 7. This one's easy because it's got all pluses. So it's going to be a cubed, a squared, a, and then I start with b cubed, b squared, b, put your 3's in the middle, and then everything is pluses. Okay, like I said, I couldn't just read you this formula. I have to build it every single time, but since I know how it works, then I have it whenever I need it. A is going to be 2x and b is going to be 1, so let's plug this in. We have 2x cubed. We have to square the whole thing, not just the x. Plus 3 times 2x squared times b, which is 1, plus 3 times 2x times 1 squared plus 1 cubed. So when we clean this up, we get 8x cubed, cube the 2, 3 times 4x squared, so that's going to be plus 12x squared plus 6x plus 1. Okay. Those are the basic ideas there. We are going to look at polynomials in several variables in the next video.